Vice President Pence didn't ultimately accede to Trump's wishes to block the certification of the election, to overturn the election results, to leave Trump in power, or to render the election results unknowable. But it was not, apparently, for a lack of him trying to find a way to do that. This is from Woodward and Costa. Quote, in late December, Pence phoned former Vice President Dan Quayle. At 74, the once boyish-looking Quayle was living the private golf-playing life he loved in Arizona. The two men shared a unique profile, Indiana Republicans who had become vice president. Pence phoned because he wanted advice. Despite the Electoral College casting its ballots for Biden back on December 14th, Trump was convinced that Pence could somehow throw the election to Trump on January 6th when Congress met to certify the final count. Pence explained to his fellow Indianan, Dan Quayle, that Trump was pressuring him to intervene to ensure Biden wouldn't secure the needed 270 votes during the certification and push the election to a vote in the House of Representatives. If thrown to the House, there was a twist. And Trump was fixated on this twist, Pence said. It was the provision that could, theoretically at least, keep Trump in power. While the Democrats held the current House majority, the 12th Amendment of the Constitution stated that the voting on a contested election wouldn't be done by a simple majority vote in the House. Instead, the amendment says the election vote would be counted in blocks of state delegations with one vote per state. Republicans controlled more delegations in the House of Representatives, meaning Trump would likely win if the House chamber ended up deciding the victor based on the prescripts of that amendment. Former Vice President Dan Quayle thought Trump's suggestion was preposterous and dangerous. Trump's effort to cajole Pence was a dark Rube Goldberg-like fantasy, Quayle believed, and could precipitate a constitutional crisis. Quayle told Mike Pence, quote, Mike, you have no flexibility on this. None. Zero. Forget it. Put it away. Pence said in reply, I know. That's what I've been trying to tell Trump. But he really thinks he can. And there are other guys in there saying, I've got this power. Quayle interrupted him. You don't. Just stop it, he said. Pence pressed again. It was easy for Quayle to make a blanket statement from political winter. He wanted to know, Veep to Veep, whether there was even a glimmer of light, legally and constitutionally, to perhaps put a pause on the certification if there were ongoing court cases and legal challenges. Quayle repeated, forget it. Pence finally agreed. Acting to overturn the election would be antithetical to his traditional view of conservatism. One man could not effectively throw the election to the House of Representatives. Quayle told Pence to let it go. Mike, don't even talk about it, he said. Pence paused. You don't know the position I'm in, he said. Even if you're someone like Mike Pence, who's very invested in publicly assuaging and placating your boss, if you're really committed to the rule of law and not letting Trump overturn the election, but you're just trying to make Trump less mad at you, it's not going to help to call Dan Quayle, right, and ask Dan Quayle for his advice on how to do what Trump says. You don't call Dan Quayle just to appease Trump, even though you never have any intention of doing what Trump wants you to do. What is being described in this new book is the action of a man who really genuinely is searching for a way he can do what Trump wants. In that conversation later recounted with Dan Quayle, Woodward and Costa report that Pence even raises the prospect that there were real problems in the vote count in Arizona, as if maybe that was enough of a pretext to justify not certifying the entire election and thereby setting the stage to throw it to the House of Representatives, where Republicans in the House would ensure that Trump held on to power despite losing to Joe Biden. And this new book makes clear that Pence was far closer than we had previously realized to doing some version of what Trump wanted him to do. And with more than half the entire Republican caucus in the House ultimately voting to reject the election results. I mean, Mike Pence was the guy who stopped that from happening, but it was close. We were there. And the right has honestly made no progress in widening the distance from how close we were in the months since. Right? The problem here is that this history, this newly disturbing slice of our history, which we're learning from Woodward and Costa in this new book, this history isn't very old as history. But this all happened only a few months ago. And since then, in the intervening 8 months, On the right in Republican politics, it's not like this stuff has gotten better. It's not like this matter has been settled and put away as a sort of historical curiosity, little moment of madness that everybody will deny they were ever really caught up in at the time. I mean, the 2020 election results are still not a settled matter for the Republican Party, actively.